Two-Face here, back with another reaction video. This time reacting to the start of World War III, the Cuban Missile Crisis Day 8 by Time Goes History. So if you haven't seen my reaction to the other episodes, I suggest you check them out before checking this one out. And sorry, itchy nose. Again, brilliantly presented by Indy Nidell, and the usual disclaimer that when I react to anything historical, if I don't give so much of what is considered a proper reaction, is because it's obvious that I don't know much about the topic at hand. So if I do have any input that of anything I might know, I might add it in or ask any curious questions. So, and I'm also, the other reason why I might not react properly is I'm trying to take in information, because this is another subject that I don't have much knowledge on. So hopefully me and everyone who watches my reaction or watches the original learns along the way. So the link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go and subscribe to Time Goes History and check out their content and support their channel. And without further ado, let's get this up on screen and let's get into this.
Remember when you were a kid and you built Day 8?
Right.
Remember when you were a kid and you built something cool but dangerous, like a pirate ship, using all the pillows you could find, and you're in the Caribbean on a swashbuckling adventure with your little brother, using broomsticks for swords, and then suddenly some grown-up walks in yelling at you to stop, because it's all fun and games till someone loses an eye, followed by angry questions about what the hell are all the pillows doing on the floor, and suddenly you're at home again, the ship is gone, and you're just standing in front of a mountain of old pillows, realizing that this maybe was, in fact, a little bit dangerous, and you could have maybe hurt your brother. That is probably roundabout how the Soviet leadership feels on the 8th day of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Except
one way of putting it.
It really is the Caribbean, and it is nuclear missiles, and it is, in fact, extremely dangerous.
Cool. Desktop noise is quite loud.
This is Time Goes to Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm Indy Nidell. Yesterday, President Kennedy announced to the world that there are Soviet medium-range ballistic missiles on Cuba, and announced a blockade to stop any further weapons arriving on the island. He claimed that there was no desire from the U.S. to take unilateral action and start a war. But the actual plan that he has set in motion includes an invasion of Cuba, possibly even the total annihilation of Cuba, if the Soviets do not remove the missiles and the warheads immediately.
Wow.
From a Soviet perspective, the Cuban Missile Crisis starts today, October 23rd, 1962, just after Kennedy's announcement. Until now, it had been Operation Anadir, a bold, secret adventure to even the odds a bit with the Americans in the nuclear arms race. Or, as Nikita Khrushchev phrased it, putting one of our hedgehogs down the Americans' trousers. I love that expression.
Wow, that is a good expression.
That the American announcement was coming, they convened their version of XCOM. Now, that's America's Executive Committee of the National Security Council, who deals with the crisis from their end, with the crisis on the other end. Theirs is a subset of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, with some military thrown in, and it will meet in several different constellations as the crisis proceeds. In the first meeting, the main participants are Premier Nikita Khrushchev, who is under increasing political pressure as his economic reinvigoration plans are failing, his de-Stalinizing reforms stalling, and now his grand foreign relations adventure is also on the brink of failure. Chairman of the Supreme Soviet, Leonid Brezhnev, formally the head of state, but in practice, second most powerful Russian politician. Brezhnev is a long-time faithful Khrushchev friend and ally, but has secretly started moving away from his failing leader. First Deputy Chairman Alexei Kosygin, another Khrushchev friend and ally. Now, he favors soft power and a rapprochement with the U.S. He is also drifting away from his failing friend and will eventually lead the coup against him and become the next premier in 1964.
Wow.
Deputy Chairman Anastas Mikoyan. As we already know, he's the only member of the Politburo that opposed Operation Anadir. He was the first to visit Cuba after the revolution and knows the Cuban situation better than anyone else in the room. Mikoyan also favors a rapprochement with the U.S. and liberal reforms. On a side note, his brother Artem Mikoyan is the airplane designer that partnered with Mikhail Gurevich to create the MiG aircraft designs. True story. Second Secretary of the Communist Party, Mikhail Suslov, a staunch ideologue sometimes called the Pope of Communism. He is vehemently opposed to rapprochement with the U.S. He leads Khrushchev's main opposition and favors a hard line against the West. First Deputy Prime Minister and Chairman of the Committee of Party and State Control, Alexander Shelepin, the former head of the KGB and now political leader of the party branch that controls the KGB. Shelepin is a serious communist hardliner and the architect of communist rebellions and revolutions in other parts of the world. As such, he was instrumental in helping Castro take control of Cuba, and he believes in an aggressive militarist foreign policy. Defense Minister Marshal Rodion Malinowski. As we know from the last few days, Malinowski is a traditional military man that opposes the use of nuclear arms in any conflict. Although he was a co-creator and early supporter of Operation Anadir, he now questions the operation as having got out of hand. Deputy Army Chief of Staff General Semyon Ivanov supports Khrushchev. He is a career military man and does not get involved in the political side of things. The group meets the first time at 10 p.m. Moscow time on October 22nd. With the time difference, this is 2 hours before Kennedy's address, and they have received neither a letter from Kennedy nor a transcript of his coming statement, but they have been informed that they are on their way. General Ivanov gives an update on the deliveries of arms. Several new shipments have left port on their way to Cuba. Most ships are too far away from Cuba to make it across the blockade line before it takes effect. But one very important ship, with a 4-ship escort, is close enough to maybe make it into port before the blockade takes effect. It is the Alexandrovsk, a large Swedish-built cargo ship carrying 24 1-megaton nuclear warheads, 44 14-kiloton warheads for tactical cruise missiles. Malinowski opines that the U.S. will not go to war over the situation if not further provoked. He believes that Kennedy's statement is a stunt for the coming elections, but he also believes that further provocation could worsen the situation quickly. Khrushchev sides with Malinowski, saying, "The point is that we do not want to unleash a war. We want to intimidate and restrain the USA vis-a-vis Cuba. The difficult thing is that we did not concentrate everything that we wanted and did not publish the treaty." See, just like the Americans were a few days ago, Khrushchev is concerned with the legality of their actions. They do have a defense treaty with the Cubans, but it is secret. So this revelation makes them look bad and weakens its legality. They argue about announcing the treaty immediately over the radio, but they don't do it since this is unclear if it would help or worsen the current situation. Khrushchev concludes, "The tragic thing, they can attack and we will respond. This could escalate into a large-scale war." This leads to a discussion about the appropriate immediate response. The hardliners advocate allowing the forces on Cuba the discretion to use their tactical arms in case of U.S. aggression. Malinowski points out that if such an order became known, it would give the U.S. justification to strike back with atomic force. Especially if it came out that the order was given before Kennedy's address. Remember, we're still ahead of Kennedy's TV speech. Obviously, there is also a risk that actions resulting from the blockade could escalate into a nuclear exchange. For now, they decide to order the Cuban forces not to use the nukes and to revisit the subject in the morning after they've read Kennedy's note and transcript. They will, however, inform agricultural specialist Pavlov, aka General Pliev, on Cuba to make his troops combat ready. They order all ships still in the Mediterranean to turn back to Soviet ports. The ships that are in the Atlantic but have no chance of reaching Cuba before the blockade takes effect are ordered now to hold. The Alexandrovsk, with her deadly cargo of warheads, totaling over 30 megatons of explosive power, is to proceed to the closest Cuban port. They adjourn for the night and await Kennedy's missives. When they meet again, they have regained some resolve. They create a laundry list of actions, including informing their allies and the public about the situation. They draft a resolution for the UN Security Council, and they write a strongly worded protest note to President Kennedy. They also decide to send a telegram to Castro, informing him that they will stand by Cuba and ask him to come to the next session of the UN. They will also immediately inform Soviet ambassador to the UN, Valerian Zorin, so that he can start preparing for a face-off with his American counterpart, Adlai Stevenson. The most significant decisions they take, though, are military or about legality of action. 4 nuclear-armed Foxtrot-class submarines are on their way to Cuba. Their purpose is to take up permanent base in the port of Mariel, codenamed Operation Kama. This is a response to the permanent placement of U.S. subs armed with ballistic nukes in the port of Holy Loch, Scotland. Now, the 4 submarines are still far away from the blockade line, but are to proceed as ordered and to try to run the line. This decision will eventually prove central to the chaotic escalation of the crisis. Last, but...
I could be wrong, but wouldn't that be difficult since, radar technology has advanced a lot since the World Wars, and they probably might be picked up by sonar, but it's hard to tell how reliable it was in the 1960s.
Not least, they decide to not officially announce their defense treaty with Cuba. This, too, will prove central to the outcome of the crisis. So, the Soviets have decided to stay their course, but will try to avoid a direct confrontation on the blockade line. They're playing for time. In the communication to Castro, they explain about the whole missile plan. It was halfway successful and half not. It is positive that the whole world is focused on Cuba now. Time will pass, and if needed, weaponry will again be sent. Meanwhile, in the U.S., President Kennedy is turning words into actions. He meets with all the members of the OAS, the Organization of American States, the Continental Organization of Cooperation between the countries in South and North America. Cuba was excluded from that in January 1961 on the grounds that Marxism-Leninism is incompatible with the inter-American system. Kennedy manages to get a unanimous vote ratifying his blockade. Moreover, under the Rio Treaty on Mutual Assistance between the OAS states in case of aggression, several other nations will participate actively in the blockade. Argentina, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, and Venezuela will provide ships, air support, and even ground forces. Trinidad and Tobago offer the use of Chaguarama's naval base to warships of any OAS nation for the duration of the blockade. Kennedy then spends the rest of the day in a series of meetings dealing with the details and minutiae of how to enforce the blockade and still minimize the risk for the outbreak of general war. We'll get back to that in a few days. At 6 p.m., he signs the proclamation for interdiction of the delivery of offensive weapons to Cuba at the Oval Office. The blockade will go into effect at 2 p.m. Greenwich time tomorrow, October 24th, 1962. That line is set at 800 nautical miles from Cuba. When the last meeting with XCOM ends, the Kennedy brothers are alone in the room with the recorder still on. The president is on the phone with the First Lady and then returns to his brother. They return to the crisis.
Sorry, I had to turn my speakers down because this is painful to...
Bobby Kennedy expresses frustration about not having direct communication.
Sorry about that. It's just the recording. It's not... I'm not blaming it on Indy or the people of Time Goes. It's just the sound of the recording was... Don't know why, but it was really hurting my ears, so I had to turn my speakers down.
With the Soviets. And the president asks about the spy, Georgy Bolshakov, who has been Robert's liaison with them. Robert Kennedy now goes to an off-the-record meeting with the Soviet Union's ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Dobrinin. Kennedy's message is simple. Tell Khrushchev to start communicating openly with President Kennedy. Dobrinin repeats his statement from previous meetings that there are no missiles on Cuba. In fact, he's not aware that he's lying. Nobody has told him about the missiles. Kennedy advises him to check his facts with his government and return to the White House. There he joins the president, who is split from his dinner party and is now taking drinks with British Ambassador David Ormsby Gore. The ambassador gives the president some advice. Move the blockade line from 800 to 500 nautical miles so that the Soviets have more time to consider their options. Kennedy immediately calls Defense Secretary McNamara and has the line moved. So, on opposite sides of the Iron Curtain that night, the two most powerful men in the world go to bed fretting and worrying about their political futures, while the rest of the world sleeps restlessly in fear of the nuclear world war that those two leaders may have just launched. Join us tomorrow on day 9, when the blockade goes into effect, and it looks like Soviet ships might try to pass it after all. We are planning to do an even more ambitious project than this one, covering Pearl Harbor minute by minute in real time on December 7th. If you'd like to see that, then please support us on Patreon at patreon.com or timeghost.tv. We are nowhere near close to having the funding for that, and it is your support on Patreon that will make it happen. Do not forget to subscribe and ring that bell to never miss the Time Ghost action. Good night, and good luck.
And that'll do it. This has been another interesting video by Time Ghost History about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's kind of a scary thought, really, that in the 1960s the whole world would have been engulfed in a nuclear world war, and it must be frightening for some of politicians on either side, where some of them don't even know half the story of what their leaders have already planned. But anyway, this has been another interesting video by Time Ghost History. If you like this reaction, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next